August 19th, 1942. Dense jungle near Taivu Point, Guadalcanal. Second Lieutenant Genjiro Imi of the 8th Independent Anti-Tank Gun Company opened his diary, hands trembling slightly, capturing the shock that gripped every Japanese soldier as they faced the unknown, the Americans. Through the thick canopy of palm trees, strangling vines hanging like silent sentinels, Imi and 916 other soldiers of Colonel Kona Ichiki's detachment had just stepped off the destroyers. The nighttime landing was meant to be the first step in recapturing Henderson Field. They had been told the Americans were perhaps 2,000 men, poorly trained, easily frightened, soft from lives of luxury. Colonel Ichiki himself had waved aside warnings to wait for reinforcements. "These are Americans," he told his officers. "We will sweep them into the sea before sunrise." But what none of these battle-hardened veterans, men who had known nothing but victory since 1937, could fathom was that they were about to face something entirely unprecedented. Not merely defeat, no, but the systematic demolition of every tactical assumption, every strategic concept, every ideological certainty that defined the Japanese way of war. The jungle itself would become an American weapon. The darkness, which had cloaked Japanese movements since the war began, would betray them. The sheer destructive capability, the equipment, the coordination, they would shatter the myth of Japanese invincibility in close combat. The transformation had begun 2 weeks earlier, on August 7th, when 11,000 United States Marines of the 1st Marine Division stormed ashore at Lunga Point. General Alexander Vandergrift's Leathernecks were executing Operation Watchtower, the first American offensive in the Pacific. On paper, the objective seemed simple: seize the nearly completed Japanese airfield, establish a defensive perimeter, and hold the position until relieved. But reality was far harsher. They were about to fight the longest, most brutal campaign in Marine Corps history up to that point, in an environment that would test human endurance to its absolute limits. Guadalcanal itself was a vision of tropical hell, mountains reaching 8,000 feet, cloaked in perpetual clouds, coastal plains choked with kunai grass, swamp and jungle so dense that visibility dropped to mere feet. The heat suffocated, humidity never below 90%, mosquitoes swarmed in clouds thick enough to inhale, rivers and streams teeming with parasites and disease, malaria, dengue fever, dysentery, tropical ulcers, eventually disabling more men than enemy fire. But on that first morning, the Marines found the airfield almost undefended. The 2,200 Japanese construction workers and 600 naval troops fled into the jungle, abandoning equipment, supplies, and most importantly, the airfield itself. By nightfall on August 8th, Americans' engineers were already at hard work completing the runway. They would name it Henderson Field, after Major Lofton Henderson, a Marine aviator killed at Midway. Within days, the first aircraft would land, and the island would become home to what history remembers as the Cactus Air Force. The Japanese response was swift and catastrophic. On the night of August 9th, Vice Admiral Gonichi Mikawa led 7 cruisers and 1 destroyer in a surprise attack. The Battle of Savo Island became the worst defeat in United States Navy history. 4 heavy cruisers, USS Quincy, USS Vincennes, USS Australia, and HMAS Canberra, sank in less than an hour. More than 1,000 sailors perished in flaming waters. The surviving Allied forces withdrew, taking with them most of the supplies yet to be unloaded. The Marines were stranded, cut off, facing a reinforced enemy with barely half their equipment and food. Yet what the Japanese High Command failed to grasp was this: Henderson Field was the key to everything. Control of the airfield meant control of the surrounding seas in daylight. Aircraft from Henderson Field could strike any Japanese ship within 200 miles, a fact that would dictate the campaign. The Japanese could own the night, sending in troops and supplies aboard fast destroyers in the Tokyo Express. But when dawn broke, American aircraft ruled the skies.
Imperial General Headquarters assigned the task of retaking Henderson Field to Lieutenant General Harukichi Hayakutake's 17th Army, based at Rabaul. Forces were limited. The 35th Infantry Brigade under Major General Kiyotake Kawaguchi was at Palau. The 4th Infantry Regiment was in the Philippines. The closest unit, Colonel Ichiki's 28th Infantry Regiment, had been stationed near Guam, originally intended for Midway, before that operation failed. Colonel Koneo Ichiki, an infantry school instructor, reputed as a first-rate tactician, impulsive, supremely confident in Japanese fighting spirit over American material. Before departing Truk for Guadalcanal, Ichiki received orders: wait for the rest of his regiment before attempting to retake the airfield. But Ichiki, he had little respect for American soldiers. Reports from China, the Philippines, everywhere Western troops had been encountered. They lacked discipline, broke under pressure, could not match Japanese warriors in close combat. On the night of August 18th, 6 destroyers delivered 917 men of Ichiki's first element to Taivu Point, 15 miles east of the American perimeter. The landing went smoothly, undetected. Ichiki immediately sent out reconnaissance patrols, routine, tactical, but fatal. On August 19th, a patrol from Company A, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, under Captain Charles Brush, moved along the coastal track toward Kohi Point and spotted Japanese soldiers. The two forces collided in a brief, vicious firefight. Whispers, 31 Japanese soldiers fell. Documents were captured, revealing a significant enemy presence. Most importantly, the Japanese severely underestimated American strength. Captain Brush raced back to the perimeter with the intelligence. General Vandegrift understood immediately. A Japanese attack, soon, probably from the east. He ordered Colonel Clifton Cates to strengthen defenses along the sandbar at the mouth of what Marines called the Tenaru River. Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Cresswell's 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, positioned machine guns to create interlocking fields of fire. And then the nightmare began. Colonel Ichiki, ignoring intelligence and reinforcements, decided to attack immediately. On the night of August 20th, into the early morning of August 21st, he ordered a frontal assault across the sandbar. Japanese doctrine emphasized spiritual power and aggressive night attacks to overcome firepower. Ichiki believed his veterans could break through via audacity, via close-quarters fighting, where Japanese soldiers excelled with bayonets and grenades. On quick, just after midnight, Solomon Island scout Jacob Vuza escaped from Japanese captives after hours of torture, stumbled into Marine lines with a warning. Whispers, they were coming. Minutes later, hundreds of Japanese soldiers charged across the sandbar, screaming, firing, hurling grenades. They ran directly into a killing zone. M1917A1 Browning water-cooled machine guns opened fire. Perfected in World War I, unsung heroes of Marine firepower. 600 rounds per minute indefinitely, as long as water jackets were filled. Interlocking positions, every inch of sandbar covered. Japanese soldiers fell in waves, 30 caliber rounds tearing through flesh and bone. Those who made it faced 37mm anti-tank guns loaded with canister rounds, giant shotgun shells. Men shredded.
Wave after wave, hand-to-hand combat, rifles, knives, fists, anything available. But the defenses held. By dawn, Ichiki's attack had stalled. Over 800 men lay dead or dying. Daybreak brought no relief. General Vandegrift ordered a counterattack. M3 Stuart light tanks crossed the sandbar, hunting Japanese soldiers hiding in coconut groves. Richard Tregascus, a war correspondent, watched from a Marine position. Fascinating, he wrote. Groups flushed out, shot down by canister shells. By midday, the Battle of the Tenaru was over. 917 Japanese soldiers landed, approximately 800 dead. 128 survivors, mostly support units, melted into the jungle. Colonel Ichiki was dead. Accounts differ. Some said ritual suicide. Some said final charge. Marine casualties, 40 killed and wounded. The psychological impact on Japanese soldiers, devastating. Captured documents, post-war accounts. They realized an entire regiment had been annihilated in a single night. Americans did not fight as Japanese doctrine predicted. They did not panic. They did not break. They waited, allowed the Japanese to enter killing zones, and systematically destroyed them. The most devastating revelation? Material superiority. Browning machine guns never jammed, never overheated, never failed. Marines carried more ammunition than entire Japanese squads. Artillery support, coordination between infantry, artillery, and naval gunfire. An integrated system of destruction Japanese forces had never seen. Within days, more Japanese forces en route. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto organized a massive naval operation. Transport ships tried to deliver remaining soldiers, but slow transports were too vulnerable. Instead, destroyers, the Tokyo Express, efficient for men, useless for heavy equipment. Artillery, tanks, trucks, adequate food and ammunition left behind.
Soldiers arrived with only what they could carry. Foraging, supplemented by meager rice deliveries, starvation became a constant companion. The days on Guadalcanal were measured not by sunrise or sunset, but by the relentless drumbeat of combat, and by the fragility of human endurance. Ammunition was so precious that orders often restricted fire to moments of absolute necessity. Medical care was almost non-existent, sometimes a bandage if fortune favored you. Amputation without anesthesia if it did not, or death if infection claimed your wound. Soldiers gravely wounded were sometimes handed grenades and left alone to choose between a final act of agency or the slow, inevitable toll of despair. In late October, the Japanese launched their largest offensive of the campaign. General Hyakutake personally arrived on Guadalcanal to oversee operations. He brought elements of the 2nd Division, veterans hardened by battles in China. The plan was ambitious. Coordinated assaults from multiple directions, the main effort slicing through the southern jungle in a brutal echo of Bloody Ridge. This time, Japanese forces had more men, better coordination, and artillery finally brought ashore by destroyers. The attack began on October 23rd. From the west, 9 Japanese tanks, rare sights on Guadalcanal due to transport difficulties, rolled across the Matanika River. But American defenders, including fresh troops from the 164th Infantry Regiment, were ready. Anti-tank guns, artillery, even a lone M3 Stuart tank tore through all 9 tanks in rapid succession. The attack collapsed, leaving the Japanese forces reeling with staggering losses. Night fell on October 24th. Around 5,600 Japanese troops, led by Major General Yumio Nasu, surged from the south toward Henderson Field. Waiting for them was the 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, under Lieutenant Colonel Louis Chesty Puller, reinforced by the 164th Infantry Regiment. What unfolded became legend. Waves of Japanese attackers pressed through the darkness only to be met with furious counterattacks. Machine gunners fired until their weapons broke, then grabbed rifles, continuing the fight with grim determination. Artillery from the 11th Marines rained danger-close missions mere yards from the front line. Offshore, the battleship USS Washington loomed, ready to unleash devastation if called. Sergeant John Basilone, already a hero of Bloody Ridge, became pivotal again. Ammunition dwindled for his machine gun section. Without hesitation, he ran through enemy fire to resupply his men. He repaired broken machine guns in the open, and when a position was overrun, he seized a .45 pistol and led a counterattack that restored the line. By dawn, October 25th, the Japanese offensive had faltered. General Nasu was dead, felled by machine gun fire. Over 2,000 Japanese soldiers perished that night. American casualties were severe, but sustainable. October also brought naval battles that shifted the Guadalcanal balance decisively. From November 12th to 15th, intense surface combat raged. On November 13th, in a chaotic nighttime melee, American cruisers and destroyers faced Japanese bombardment forces, including battleships Hii and Kirishima. Rear Admirals Daniel Callahan and Norman Scott became the only American flag officers killed in World War II surface engagements. The Americans lost 2 light cruisers and 4 destroyers. 3 more were damaged, yet the Japanese lost the battleship Hii, disabled that night and sunk by aircraft the next day. Henderson Field survived unscathed, a critical bastion of Allied power. On November 14th, the battleship Kirishima tried again, only to be obliterated by USS Washington's radar-directed guns. 9 16-inch shells found their mark where Japanese lookouts barely glimpsed the target. Japanese convoys attempting to land the 38th Division were decimated by artillery and aircraft. Of 11 transport ships, only 4 reached Guadalcanal, and these 2 were destroyed. Over 5,000 Japanese lives were lost in the effort. It was the last serious attempt to reinforce the island with a properly equipped ground force.
November marked the beginning of the end. Starving troops learned that no help was coming. Rations shrank, medical supplies vanished. Diaries captured the slow collapse. Soldiers reduced to eating grass and bark, succumbing to disease, poisoned plants, or simply their weakened bodies. By December, Japanese command accepted reality. Guadalcanal could not be held without complete annihilation of the 17th Army. 11,000 remained, down from 36,000. Only 7,000 were fit to walk. The rest were shadows of men, too sick or starved to move. Operation K, the evacuation, became a remarkable feat. Using destroyers in Tokyo Express-style runs, Japanese forces rescued 10,652 men over 3 nights in February 1943. Yet this success could not erase defeat. From a peak of 36,000 troops, approximately 25,000 to 30,000 perished, 14,800 in combat, 10,000 to 15,000 from disease and starvation. American casualties, though heavy, were sustainable. Roughly 1,600 killed in action, 4,200 wounded, and thousands temporarily disabled by tropical diseases. Guadalcanal reshaped military understanding. Japanese forces had underestimated American fighting spirit, equipment, and tactical competence. Systems mattered: logistics, artillery coordination, medical support, air and naval power. Courage and skill could not compensate for systemic deficiencies. Arisaka rifles and light machine guns could not match the sustained firepower of Garands, Browning machine guns, and M1A1 pack howitzers. American forces fought an industrial war, where production and systems determined victory. The final American offensive in January 1943 crushed the remaining Japanese positions with overwhelming artillery, air, and naval support. By February 9th, patrols found the island empty of Japanese forces. The first major American ground victory against Japan was complete. Lessons learned in blood, starvation, and jungle warfare would echo throughout the Pacific. Guadalcanal was more than a battle. It was a crucible where myths were shattered, where the warrior spirit collided with industrial might. Japanese soldiers learned that bravery alone could not prevail. Americans discovered their strength, their doctrine, and their ability to endure. The jungles bore scars for decades: aircraft wrecks, destroyed vehicles, and abandoned equipment standing as silent witnesses. The human cost was staggering, yet the strategic significance justified it. Guadalcanal became a template for modern warfare. Systems, logistics, coordination, and overwhelming firepower turned the tide. Japanese forces would never regain the initiative. The lessons, written in blood and etched in memory, carried forward for the rest of the Pacific War. As the months passed, Guadalcanal remained a silent witness to the ferocity of 6 months of combat. The jungles, once alive with the shouts and gunfire of battle, now held only the echoes of what had been. Henderson Field stood as a testament to determination, expanded and improved to serve as a critical base for Allied operations in the Solomon Islands. The island itself bore scars that would remain for decades: wrecked aircraft, destroyed vehicles, abandoned equipment, and unexploded ordnance. Silent reminders of a conflict that had tested human endurance to its limits.
The veterans of Guadalcanal on both sides carried the memories of this crucible for the rest of their lives. American Marines and Army soldiers became the instructors and leaders of new units, passing hard-won lessons about jungle warfare, defensive tactics, and combined arms coordination. Japanese survivors, evacuated during Operation K, returned to the Pacific Theater with the psychological weight of defeat and the knowledge of an enemy far stronger than they had imagined. Many would not survive the next battles, their courage tested again in a war that had only begun to reveal its true scale. Guadalcanal was more than a victory. It was a revelation. For the Japanese, it shattered myths of invincibility, revealing that courage, night fighting, and close combat were insufficient against an enemy armed with systems, logistics, and overwhelming firepower. For the Americans, it confirmed that bravery, training, coordination, and industrial might could overcome even the most determined adversaries. Guadalcanal became a lesson written in blood and endurance, that wars are not won by bravery alone, but by preparation, logistics, coordination, and the ability to sustain operations over time. It proved that material advantage, when applied systematically, could decisively alter outcomes. And it showed that in the jungle of the Pacific, determination, courage, and skill had to meet not just an enemy, but a war machine. The story of Guadalcanal is a story of human endurance, ingenuity, and sacrifice. It reminds us that victory is never guaranteed, that every soldier, whether surviving or fallen, played a part in shaping the course of history. The courage of those who fought there echoes through the generations, teaching lessons that extend far beyond any battlefield. And now, dear viewers, if you enjoyed traveling through history with us, witnessing the bravery, struggle, and triumph of Guadalcanal, I invite you to become part of our community. Please hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it with friends who love stories of history, courage, and the human spirit. Your support helps us continue bringing these moments from the past to life. Thank you for watching, for honoring the memory of those who fought, and for keeping history alive. Until next time, may we remember the sacrifices of the past and carry forward the lessons they taught.